In this video, I'm going to go over why the 4% rule is broken and what you should use instead. In the past here on the channel and on a lot of other financial channels on YouTube, we talk about how much money you need for retirement, and a lot of us use the 4% rule as a gauge. And for those who have never watched an investment video talking about the 4% rule before, first and foremost, welcome. And what the 4% rule is basically a rule of thumb telling you how much money you can take from your retirement savings every single year without ever having to run out of money. There are a few assumptions included in the 4% rule, but how it works is that let's say you have a $1 million stock market portfolio by the time you choose to retire at any given age. And what the 4% rule recommends is that you take 4% of the portfolio out on an annual basis before taxes to live on. So in this case, with a $1 million portfolio, you will be taking $40,000 out annually. And ideally, your portfolio will continue to grow at 8% annually so that you continue making back any money that you withdrew and then some, so that when accounting for taxes and inflation, that you will continue having enough money until you're finally put in the dirt. And this sounds like a great plan. And this was actually a plan that I was pursuing for myself for a very long time until I realized that it has some severe limitations, which involve some of the assumptions that are included with the 4% rule. And one of those assumptions are that 60% of your retirement savings has to be in stocks or equity. And if we're continuing to use the $1 million portfolio as an example, then at least $600,000 of your portfolio will have to be in stocks. As well, that it also assumes that 40% or less of your portfolio is going to be in fixed income or bonds. The reason why it's 40% or less is that bonds tend to have a lower return than stocks do. So if you have more than 40% of your portfolio in bonds, then taking out 4% every single year may ultimately cause your portfolio to decrease in value over time, because you won't be getting that same benefit of stock market growth year after year. And this will also assume that you owe tax on the money that you withdraw. So in this assumption, the money will more than likely be coming from a 401k or a traditional IRA or even a brokerage account. But it's assuming that whenever you take your withdrawals, you will have to pay capital gains tax, probably long-term capital gains tax in this case, which would eat away at about 20% of your buying power. So ultimately, on that $1 million portfolio, after taxes, you only will be living on around $32,000 to $35,000 a year. And I know that personally in 2023, it is going to be pretty difficult for a young, healthy couple to live on $32,000 a year, let alone a couple of 60, 65-year-olds that have increase in medical expenses every single year. And I wasn't just naive enough to think that even if I save $1 million in my lifetime, I still will only have barely enough to survive once I reach retirement age. So I may as not save anything at all anyway and just enjoy my money while I have it. But instead, I started trying to find an alternative way to make my retirement dreams true and how I can work towards that dream at the age of 25, which I am right now. But before we go into those alternatives, let's talk about why the 4% rule used to work and why it doesn't work today. And that's because a number of risks that was involved in the 4% rule were of much less magnitude than they could be today. And the first of those risks is called the sequence of returns risk. And I don't want to get this wrong, so I wrote a little bit of an impromptu script about exactly what this is. And it basically says that the sequence of returns risk is the risk of the stock market experiencing more downturns than upturns early in your retirement. So your retirement savings may not last as long as you originally planned. And I think that this risk holds a lot more weight than it did in the 1990s, because we are coming off one of the longest bull runs in the stock market history, meaning that we are coming down from the longest stretch that the stock market has increasingly grown every single year. And if we do a little bit of a probability, saying that if we just had 15 years of unprecedented growth, then it may make sense to have a few years of downturns if the stock market is cyclical in nature. Yes, there has been ups and downs in this growth period, but over a long-term period of time, we may actually be seeing the opposite of the bull market, where we have a mostly downtrending pattern for 10 or 15 years and some recoveries that are not as high as they were before. I personally hope and don't think that this will happen, but if you were planning your retirement around the 4% rule and your portfolio wasn't growing every single year, then instead of your money lasting forever, but you only withdrawing 4%, you may slowly start to see your portfolio decline over time. And now that you're too old to start working to put more money into the portfolio, you will have to rely on children, friends, and other people in order to make basic ends meet. Now, I'm not trying to be a doomsday forecaster or anything like that. I just want to address the risk for myself and my family so that I can plan for them accordingly well in advance without having to rely on funds from other people when I can no longer work. But the second major risk is something I talked about earlier. It is going to be the health risk of retiring with 4%. If you're using the 4% rule, saying that you're only going to take 4% of your portfolio each year, and you're basing that on your current living expenses when you're 35, 45, or even 25 years old like I am, this is not accounting for one of the largest expenses when you age, which is going to be healthcare. As you get older, you're going to need more doctor's visits, you're going to have to pay more co-pays, and the average health expenses for a couple over the age of 65 is $300,000. So if you're planning on being healthy forever and only taking out $40,000 $40,000 a year, you probably won't have any money left over if almost a third of your portfolio is going just to keep you healthy. Not to mention that if you do pay that $300,000 to stay healthy, then that introduces a new longevity risk to your portfolio, meaning that you may actually live longer, and by living longer, you run the risk of running out of money sooner than you expected. However, one of the largest risks, and a topic that I haven't touched on in a lot of my videos because it makes me seem a little bit paranoid, is going to be the Social Security risk. Now, to anyone who has had a decent history teacher, we all know that Social Security is running out fast. It actually says here that the Social Security Trust Fund could run out as soon as 2035, which is only 12 years from now. So while a portion of our career earnings are paying into Social Security, as more people retire and start to draw on those benefits, the money that we put in as working people between the age of 18 and 30, we probably won't ever see a dime of it again. So if you're someone who's counting on getting that check in retirement so that you can supplement your retirement savings, then honestly, unless an entirely new system is implemented, there won't be any money for you to get. But I didn't just start recording this video to tell you all the ways that the 4% rule won't work. I want to give you some realistic alternatives to make sure that you can insulate your retirement savings and guarantee that you will have enough money come retirement time. So I actually thought about this a long time ago, and I realized that even if I live like a hermit crab and save $1.5 million, that I still barely have enough money for retirement. What I should do instead is build recurring sources of income so that I didn't have to rely on investment income come the time to retire. So don't get me wrong, my goal still is to save $1 million to $2 million by the time I retire from my W-2 job, but at the same time, I am going to be building businesses. I am going to be investing in real estate, as well as focusing on maximizing other sources of revenue so that when the time does come to retire, I'll be able to have 10 fully paid off rental properties that provide a paycheck every month, or I have a fully functional business with employees that makes a profit every single month that can cover my living expenses. I think that instead of the 4% rule where you're working only for money to put in an investment account, you should be pairing that with a method that makes recurring income that you can build to continue giving you a paycheck even after you stop working on it. And I personally think that real estate is one of the most effective ways to do this. If you build a business that you can then make $1 million from over the course of your lifetime, and you transition that $1 million that you made into 5 rental properties that pay you every single month, then you may not even need to worry about your retirement savings, but it will always be there as a safety net. I want all of my Roth IRAs, I want all of my brokerage accounts, I want all of my 401k accounts to be a safety net. I personally don't want to have to depend on that as a source of income, so that's why I'm focusing on, in my early days, maximizing my earnings potential, as I think that many of you should as well. But if you find any kind of value in this video, then tap that subscribe button for your boy, as I do make other videos about personal finance, investing, and side hustles. And if you do decide to join the community, then I will see you in the next one, guys.